In today's eMoney tip of the week, I'm going to talk to you in part one of a two-part series on what is Monte Carlo and how does it work. I'm going to get into the inner workings of Monte Carlo because I get this question all the time. It's one of the least understood things I find from people that are new to eMoney. Oh, here's debates all the time and say, well, eMoney, Greg, it's not great because it's showing 7 or 8 or 9% rate of return, not understanding that average is for Monte Carlo. It's not a linear average if you're using Decision Center the correct way. So I'm going to get in the weeds and nitty gritty of what's going on inside of here. So let's start out with the facts. I always like to access facts. Then we're going to go to base facts here. And then we're going to come down here to asset allocation. So when we look at our asset allocation, we're going to look at the portfolio. In case you ever forget what you're talking about, the return right here and the risk right here will explain in plain English a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today. But you can see the client's portfolio is 8.06% average rate of return. The risk or standard deviation is 13.15. Where does this information come from? It's based upon the data you put in the portfolio and your capital market assumptions. I always encourage people not to override their capital market assumptions unless you are the person in the RIA that is developing those. So that's going to be huge because it's going to dictate what's going on inside that portfolio. This is your proof of concept, your proof of work, if you're ever to go to some type of arbitration over your financial plan. So it's really important to have this information correct in there. When you get all those pages that print out at a go to presentation, or if you're doing some type of template in the reports, you're going to see all that information. It talks about what data was used in there, what assumptions were used inside of here. That's where that's generating that from. Typically, if you have some type of ticker, it's going to use Monte Carlo, Morningstar, to decide how those things are allocated. And then it's going to say maybe there's this much percent large cap value, and then go and use your average rate of return and standard deviations based upon the indexes that are populating inside of here. Again, if you don't know what where the information's coming from, it's all right here. So we're going to use this 8.06 and 13.15, but I just want to, a lot of times we get questions. Recommended allocation, we put these in for all of our clients. You can go and have the client fill out a risk tolerance questionnaire and have a risk tolerance questionnaire portfolio. We always do a recommended. I already have it in here, so you can click edit in here to change this, or if you don't have one in here, add it. I always like to have a recommended, so each time I meet my client, to update their financial plan, typically twice a year, but at least every year, we have a basis to what I'm recommending to see how far off they are from that. So let's get into the nitty gritty. What does Monte Carlo mean? So we're going to take these numbers here and we're going to work with them. So I'm going to go to the drawing board, something I don't normally like to do in this type of meeting. I would not do this with a client. I shouldn't say not. I don't do this with very many clients. I have some engineer clients that really want to understand the underworkings, or somebody has a lot of questions. For the most part, I'm going to keep it simple and stay inside Decision Center. So we have to go back to stats class, my least favorite class in college, but the one I probably use the most in my career outside of psychology. So what we're going to create here is our standard bell curve. In the middle of our bell curve, we're going to have our average, our arithmetic mean, right? So there's 3 different kinds of averages: mode, median, and mean. We're going to use a mean for this one, which is that 8.06% number we saw on that portfolio. And then we're going to look at the standard deviation. The standard deviation, as it simply tells you in that text there, means the results happen 68% of the time, or roughly 2/3 of the time. We're going to have 1/6 out here and 1/6 out here. So if you take any data set, you can put this together for any type of data set. Now, that 8.06, we're going to look at the standard deviation is 13.15. 13.15. So what does that mean? Another way to look at this is we have 8.06% as our average. We have a standard deviation of 13.15 and 13.15. You just simply take the 8.06 plus the 13.15, and when you add that math together, you have to give me a second here to grab my math on this, which is 21.21. If you take the 8.06, subtract out the 13.15, you're going to get negative 5.09. And you can use this to do a quick portfolio analysis. So the recommended portfolio we have was 8.65. And that's standard deviation of 15.09, 15.09. And so that's going to be negative 6.44 All I'm doing again, taking this 8.65, subtract out the 15.09, which gives us the negative 6.44. If we take the 8.65, add the 15.09, that's going to give us 23.74. Now you can show the person if we have 8.06 and we have 8.65, we subtract the difference, divide it by the 8.06. That means roughly a 7% expected greater rate of return. We can do the same with our risks, our 15.09, our 13.15. You subtract the 15.09 by the 13.15, take the delta, divide it by the 13.15, and that's going to give you 15% greater return risk. So this particular client's portfolio would only give them a 7% higher expected rate of return. They made these changes, but a 15% greater risk. So probably not the most efficient portfolio. This is all modern portfolio theory, right? We're just looking at where can we get on that efficient frontier to be a little bit more efficient, to try to get a little bit better expected rate of return than expected risk. Keep in mind, this is past results, an expectation of future extrapolated from past data. There's no guarantee of a future result for you, but at least allows you to have this conversation. You can extrapolate this a little bit further and say, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, your portfolio, this is what probably most likely happened. We're not looking at the individual funds you have, we're looking at the asset classes. And what you can see is that, think about this. And this video has been recorded in 2022, right? So you can say in 2021, where was your rate of return? 2020, where was your rate of return? 2019, where was your rate of return? 2018, and you can literally do this. You can also do it with the Standard & Poor's 500 index. It's a lot of fun for clients to understand this, how it actually works. If you go to the bottom, what the disclosures say, they're using 10% as the average, and they're using a standard deviation of 15% and 15%, which gives us -5 on the low side and +25 on the high side. Those are roughly the averages of the S&P 500 over time. I believe that's why they picked those ones in this disclosure. Obviously, they round it up and round it down to make these nice, easy numbers. But you can see that's exactly what they're showing you inside of here, right? So really, really, really important to understand what's going on inside of here and being able to illustrate this to a client and make them understand. The next part of what I plan on talking to you about, that I'm going to come back to you next week, is how does this relate to the Monte Carlo inside of plans. So I'm going to show you how this is actually happening inside of here and what it's doing. I'm also going to compare it to that flat line that a lot of people want to do. Instead of using this, they say 8.06% is too high. They're using linear projections, not Monte Carlo. Right? So the Monte Carlo is going to take an effect here, and we want to have that impact on the plan. And I'm going to show you the Monte Carlo report inside of here. We hope this tip helped educate and empower you to do more plans for your clients so that you can impact more lives through financial planning. If you have some great tips we don't know about, we'd love to hear about them. If you have a better way of doing what we just showed you, we'd love to hear about that, because we are a noble profession, and together we can elevate the profession.